Whoa, before we get into all that fun stuff, like we got to turn this recording on. We can't let our viewers miss out on talking about poop and gluten.
Where's my water going through? Is it going through plastic? Is there mold growing there in the plastic? Is it getting adequately filtered? Am I getting all the things I need to get out of it? What is my city water supply like? I need to go check the environmental working group page. Oh my gosh, is my food, are my nuts, are they in a tight enough container so they're not going to grow mold? Am I getting enough sunlight? You know, am I not exposing myself to like all these things? It's just crazy how much there is to think about now. People we didn't used to have all these issues with gluten and all these and soy and all these other things that now everyone reacts to. And bad thing in that, still like anything, there's bad apples and you can still do a lot of this stuff wrong and screw people up pretty good.
All right. Hey, we're live. Thanks for tuning in to 1D Talks. Exciting guest as usual. We're always just so blessed for just amazing guests. We have Dr. Stephen Campbell's with us. And as always, my co-host, Mr. Justin Harris. Thanks for joining the show today. We were just talking about the gluten, a little bit of gut health, and may even get into some bowel movements. And I said, whoa, before we get into all that fun stuff, like we got to turn this recording on. We can't let our viewers miss out on talking about poop and gluten. So thanks for joining the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We generally do try to get a little more into the details of, you know, scientific topics and stuff. We're not always as clowning as we are at the beginning, but so yeah, just, you know, I've seen a lot of your content out there. Just thought, you know, it's for our viewership. I thought it'd be a really good value add for them to kind of talk. We've had a couple different clinicians on, and it's always exciting to have them. And then we also kind of have the other practitioners, have it be strength coaches or people like Justin, you know, with the nutrition side of things. And so it just adds to our overall, you know, kind of value add for our viewers out there. So excited to kind of unpack this. But first, just thought we'd ask, like, why do you do what you do? You got a pretty wide scale of things that you do for people. And what are you, you know, kind of what have you been in the works with lately?
Yeah, well, I guess it depends on how far back we want to go. But, you know, I think in college, I always thought I was going to be well, first of all, I thought I was going to be a D1 college football player. That was derailed by injuries. Nice. And then after that, I'd always wanted to be in the military. I had some family members that were in the military. Thought I was going to do that. That also was derailed by said injuries. And then I always wanted to be in the CIA and do kind of that work. So I talked to a recruiter and he said, well, you need more international experience. So I ended up spending 2 years traveling Brazil and the Philippines after college. I went to Duke and majored in physics. And then I had
physics. Hey,
yeah,
I have a master's in physics.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I love it. But after that, I worked in some medical clinics, and then that kind of directed me into medicine. I just really, you know, my brother had done medicine before me and always told me to do anything but medicine. But yeah, I just kind of was like, oh, this is what I got to do. So that kind of started that. Went to UK for med school. Was between a lot of different career options at that point. Went to Ohio State, did internal medicine training, then specialized in pulmonary and critical care because I enjoyed really being challenged by the really sick patients in the ICU and having to deal with their multiple complex problems at once. But I think throughout probably residency and advanced training, I really was just kind of a little bit perplexed by the lack of attention to the things you guys talk about all the time, you know, very basic foundational health concepts, nutrition, everything like that was totally ignored. And then I think the COVID-19 experience really set that home too, with everything that I saw there. You know, pretty much every single patient that I saw that was critically ill with that were patients that were metabolically unwell. I didn't see anyone that took care of themselves that was overall healthy that ever had any problems in the intensive care unit. You know, there was one unfortunate guy that I can still remember that COVID hit him at just like the worst possible time. He was undergoing treatment for lymphoma. He was a big football player guy, and that guy went down, but that wasn't anything he could have done about that. It was just kind of, you know, really bad luck. But otherwise, I think that was the thing that just continued to push me into more of the, it's got so many names, and I hate all the different names that are out there because they have such a stigma attached to it. People kind of roll their eyes when they hear functional integrative medicine, whatever. But that's kind of
the problem, though, is that people roll their eyes with it. It's like, you know, it's outrageous. It's something that everyone can do. I always wonder why. I mean, it's kind of obvious why, you know, things like exercise and improving your diet and aren't the go-to things because they're not fun, you know, and for the general public, they don't want to believe that that's such a big player because they'd rather just eat their beers and hot dogs and then get a pill from the doctor when they get sick, you know. But it's really crazy that not only is it not implemented more, but it almost has a stigma when you talk about implementing it, which is outrageous. You know, like that the idea of eating healthier, exercising, and taking better care of yourself as part of healthcare kind of gets poo-pooed. It's like it's so ridiculous.
Yeah, it's unreal. It's totally unreal. But you know, you could go into conspiracy theories about the medical industrial complex, and I've heard plenty of talks and read books about that, and that's all fascinating. The relationship between, you know, the modern medical school in the early part of the 20th century, how there are partnerships with, you know, big pharma and the ties to Standard Oil and all these things that led to the kind of ousting of the more non-allopathic training programs and how all that got started. But yeah, that's the way that we're trained in medical school. It's, you know, diagnosis and here's your pharmaceutical and, you know, your ICD-10 codes and, you know, all that kind of stuff is very much, you know, assembly line of things. So yeah, people that I work with in that system, they really don't understand at all what I'm doing. They don't think it has any impact whatsoever, quite honestly. Well, I think they say that, and then they kind of see that they have family members go through it, like, oh, maybe there is something to this. But yeah, that's kind of been my experience as I'm kind of transitioning my career away from more traditional thing into the functional space. That's kind of what I've run into a lot.
Yeah, and I think you were talking a little bit. I know there's a lot of content, and I'm sure there's a bunch we're going to unpack here, but a little bit about, you know, gut health. I mean, I think that's it's a big thing where, like, I know we can both share kind of personal stories, but I know I thought it was normal after eating, you know, eating a cheat meal and having like some gluten or whatever, like to be hunched over and feeling like I'm going to die. Like I thought that was just normal, right? And gas pressure, you know, and whatnot. And I know Justin shared a few times, like, you know, some things he's had going on, but what's that been like for you when you're seeing that, and what's the type of kind of population you're seeing it in, and you know, can you walk us through that kind of high level, just gut issues in general, what's out there?
Yeah, no, it helps me help others with that because I have such a strong personal experience with that. You know, so ever since I was a teenager, I remember I got a horrible gastroenteritis, and after that, I would get maybe once or twice a week, I would get severe abdominal cramps. I literally have to lay down for an hour to get over. And I saw specialists for it at the time. No one really knew what it was. You know, just kind of got brushed off a little bit, continued, persisted. I remember in college when I was playing football on the sideline, I had to like walk off and lay down on the side of the field because I had horrible abdominal cramps. So it just has gone on for a long, long time. And I think that, you know, it got to such a point that when I was in medical school, I really couldn't, I had nausea every night, couldn't get to sleep. It kept me awake and I just felt miserable. And then, you know, I had endoscopies, multiple procedures, multiple labs. No one really knew what to do. They kind of just said, yeah, it's irritable bowel. You know, they did the standard testing for celiac, which is only looking at one very specific antibody, you know, an IgA antibody. And if you don't have that, then they say it's not celiac and you're fine with gluten. You know, but the traditional,
you have to have eaten gluten to even have that, right? I mean, that was my problem because I had stopped eating. I kind of knew what it was and had stopped eating gluten, and I had to make myself sick before I got, you know, the official test to get to, you know, because.
No, you're right. It's crazy. And I had one patient just recently that she had the antibody, right? And the gastroenterologist she was seeing was like, well, oh, we still want you to keep eating gluten so that when we do your scope, we can prove it with a biopsy. I'm like, what the hell? Like, why? You don't need that. Like, you have the symptoms, you have the antibody. Why are you going to torture this person? But but with my own story, you know, I had surgeries to try and fix the problem, and none of that stuff worked. I had a gallbladder taken out, all these things. And finally, I think it was doing my own research and figuring out, okay, maybe there's some point to this whole non-celiac gluten sensitivity thing. So I did that and felt much better. Tried some, you know, glutamine, these other kind of things to help heal my gut, and did much better. But later,
did you find that worked too? The glutamine, was that helpful?
That I'm really curious of, because that was really big in the fitness industry, you know, 15, 20 years ago. And then all the research seemed to show it didn't really do anything. But then, you know, so many people just self-reported improvements in digestion and gut health when they utilized it.
Yeah, no, definitely for me, you know, it was the glutamine. There's a product out there that Metagenics makes that I use. It had glutamine, had aloe vera, had licorice in it, and all those things together. And avoiding gluten was what helped me quite a bit. You know, it was the only thing that worked. The nausea went away.
If I remember correctly, so the stomach lining there's like little gaps in there, and the glutamine was
Correct.
helping repair those, to close those gaps, so that a lot of the toxins and such were not getting into your bloodstream. Is that kind of the thought process?
Exactly.
I mean, very 10,000 foot view, but
it's healing the intestinal epithelial layer. That's that very thin layer. Exactly. Because years later, when I got tested for all this, I had all the tight junctions and the zonulin and glutens proteins that seal up the intestinal epithelial layer. I was making antibodies to all this because I was destroying those layers basically from years of exposure to different antigens that I was sensitive to. Probably got kicked off by that viral gastroenteritis that I mentioned, and then years of gluten after that. But yeah, all those things I had stool testing and blood testing that proved it. And I actually got the follow-up testing that showed that all of that was healed, and I felt much better afterwards. So I proved it that way. So,
well, I know we'll keep going on this, but I can't resist. So I have to ask about H. pylori, because I have 2 family members that were tested and have H. pylori, and they're kind of being treated right now. What do you know about it? What's common treatment, et cetera? Can you kind of walk through?
Yeah, the standard treatment is a combination of bismuth subsalicylate, Pepto-Bismol, basically, plus a couple different antibiotics. Now, they've shown that a nutraceutical combination is just as effective as doing all that stuff. Because I had H. pylori too, and my got a stool test, and I got rid of it following that protocol without any antibiotics. So it's definitely doable, and definitely something you want to do just because of its relationship to ulcers and things like that, reflux. And so, yeah.
Now, was that something where did your spouse have to do a protocol as well? Because that's something that a functional nutritionist that was helping out a family member was saying, you know, if you swap saliva, the other person can have it. And I'm just like, I don't know. It seemed a little out there, but
no, I've got an interesting story about spouse stuff. But as far as the H. pylori goes, you know, there's an old saying, right? The shoemaker's wife doesn't wear shoes, right? So my wife doesn't really, she doesn't really buy into any of this stuff up until recently, which is another story. But yeah, she never got tested or anything. But okay. I do a stool test every year. The one I just had, there's still no H. pylori on there. So
gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, H. pylori is interesting because when I had a microbiology professor in undergrad who said that all ulcers were caused by H. pylori, and there were no other ulcers other than that, which I then got in trouble for in a later class when I said that, and that professor said, no, that's not the case. And I never really knew what was what, because it's like I only know what the professors tell me at that point. But I just always think it's because the fact that it's called Helicobacter, it's called a helicopter, and it's got that spiral look to it. So really, really interesting thing. But I've never really had it clarified, the whole ulcer situation, other than I was told conflicting things by undergrad professors 25 years ago.
Yeah, I think there was a very enthusiastic approach to H. pylori in the 80s when they first discovered it, and they thought it was the cause of every stomach problem there was, right?
Probably where he got it,
yeah.
Got it. Well, no, I appreciate you walking through that. I mean, I think one of the other things that you had a post about, and it's kind of closer to us, we don't, make faulty claims about our products as far as like curing anything, but we do have a QRF, like a liver health product at First Detachment. But I did look at some of your content on the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and some of the staggering stats. I think one of your posts, you said something like 48% of Americans have it. I'm just curious, where does that come from? Just kind of walk us through what is that, and people out there, like how would they be aware of if they have this issue?
Yeah, I think it's all part of the greater picture of metabolic syndrome, and part of that is elevated triglycerides, and where those triglycerides get stored in the liver, and they get fat depositions. And I don't think that it's one of those things that if you looked for it, you would find it almost all the time if you ultrasounded people's liver. But that's not a standard test that gets done. And it's also it's kind of nefarious because the ALT, AST liver enzymes, they're not going to be super high like they would be in acute hepatitis, but they are going to start creeping up slowly and surely. And the earlier, even AST, ALT in the 30s and 40s in somebody that's metabolically unwell, you want to start thinking about it. We do a lot of DEXA scanning too and pick up visceral fat, very good on that test. So it's out there. It's just not looked for.
And just variants of like diseases like non-alcoholic fatty liver that are really tightly linked to obesity. Not that you can even answer this, but I wonder how many variants of known diseases are we going to see that in as the population gets fatter and fatter? Because you're already seeing it pop up everywhere. Yeah. And that goes back to the original, like our first topic tonight was the fact that that's just the proactive approach and exercise and eating healthy is just still not pushed, despite the fact that so many of our diseases now are more and more closely and tightly linked to obesity. And some of them like that. Was there even a non-alcoholic fatty liver? Like,
yeah, you go back.
Was that even a thing 100 years ago, when no one was obese?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I mean, you look at all the statistics in terms of indications for liver transplant, no longer Hep C, there's treatment for that now. Now it's all the...
It's wild. Yeah. It just seems like, I mean, I'm not in the medical industry really. I used to work in, I was an exercise physiologist and did echocardiograms when I was younger. So I worked in hospitals growing up. My mom was a nurse. My aunt was a nurse. My grandmother was a nurse. So every summer job I had was doing something in the hospital. So I'd see stuff all the time, but even back then it was always intriguing to me that it was like, wait till you get sick and we'll fix it, which is great. The fact, that modern medicine is able to do that. It's remarkable because it's the first time in human history where that is the case. Before since the dawn of mankind, it was, some shaman said, mix these herbs together and 10% of the time it works because 10% of the time you weren't going to stay sick anyways, but now the fact that we can actually treat things is amazing. But the fact that the proactive approach was just completely removed, but basically the minute we could treat things is really interesting.
Yeah, well, I think you hit it right directly there as to why there's such a movement for this type of approach, right? It's people are sick and tired of that whole wait and see approach. People want to be proactive, and that's where there's this massive influx of companies and providers that are doing this type of care. There's such a high demand for it. And I think it's a good thing in that it can provide a great service, but it's a bad thing in that it's still like anything. There's bad apples and you can still do a lot of this stuff wrong and screw people up pretty good, so.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I mean, I'm just thinking about and there's a bunch of other questions we'll unpack too, but just like high level, there's so much testing out there, right? Like I recall working a little bit in the field, seeing, there's urine testing, there's stool testing, there's blood testing, there's genetic testing, swabs, saliva testing. Like, do you typically, when you're seeing a patient, do you find that is your approach kind of just do all the testing at once, or do you feel like you isolate on a symptom because maybe that's a little too overwhelming for people? I just found that I would get excited and want to run it, not personally run the test on people, but see them get all these tests, or even on myself, because it's like, okay, how can I optimize this area? But it can be overwhelming, so just curious, like, what do you see dealing with people every day?
So I know that the first time I ever worked with a functional provider, this particular person ordered like a boatload of tests on me, like everything, like you could possibly imagine. And it was just too much. It was like a 30-minute follow-up, and like we didn't even get close to going over all the data that we got. So I was like, well, why do we get all this stuff if we're not even going to do a lot of actions on here and I have enough time to go over all these things and this complicated information? So I try not to. I'm a huge data guy. I was physics and math. That's like my bag. Give me all the data, please. I want to make algorithms and all these kind of things. But no, I don't do that. I resist the temptation. I try and really focus on what is the primary thing that's really messing with your life right now, and let's start there and kind of go step by step. Let's not order everything at once. I think pretty much everyone, there's going to be some gut issues there. So pretty much everyone could do with a good stool test there. Right. There's going to be nutritional things, a good basic nutritional panel, hormones, all the basic stuff. Yeah, cover that, but don't go too much into the weeds. People ask about chronic Lyme and all the mold toxicity and those kind of tests. You can get really expensive and involved with that stuff. So you don't want to go off to the races initially with that. Yeah.
I have a question. I've been coaching, and doing nutrition stuff for over 20 years. So I've got a decent sample size, obviously not, 10,000 clinical research, 10,000 person clinical research, control group, everything. But it seems like a very, very, very distinct, almost linear increase in GI issues. Whereas, when I was first doing this in the very early 2000s, it was rare to have someone with, no one really seemed to have celiac, or no one really seemed to complain about GI issues, period. It was the rarity much more than the norm, where it now seems to be much more the norm, where I would argue that more than, I've never counted it out, but I would guess that more than 50% of my clients have some type of digestive issue or complaint or bowel movement complaint, or something related to digestion, where I would say it was definitely less than 25%, if not less than 15%, 20 years ago. I mean, that seems like, you know, like there's like a threefold increase in just in a quarter century.
Yeah.
Is that like, do we know why? Is there any data? I mean, because like, again, we don't do any proactive work. So is there any research in that area? Like, why is this going on? Or,
oh gosh, yeah. I mean, I've heard a lot on that topic, and it's such a hard question to answer succinctly. You know, how much of that is well, you probably answered it right there. It's probably very little to do with genetics, and so much more to do with our environmental exposures. And again, why there's so much more food sensitivities now, right? People we didn't used to have all these issues with gluten and soy and all these other things that now everyone reacts to. And, you know, you get an allergy and IgG antibodies panel on somebody, almost everyone has. They just light up like a Christmas tree and all these different things. You're like, what the hell's going on here? Why are you so reactive to all this stuff? And again, I don't have the exact answer there. You know, we need to get people on here like, you know, that are very knowledgeable on this topic. People that have mentored me before too, but
I'm not crazy in noticing that is
no.
Going to be like a nationwide. Is it global or nationwide? Because it seems, I mean, if you read, I don't say it seems, it's not like I have personal data with this, but do they process wheat differently in other countries, or why?
It's the dwarf. It's the overprocessed dwarf wheat here in America. It's different than what's over in Europe. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, Mark Hyman talks about that all the time in his things. But yeah, that's predictable. So theoretically, if we were in Italy, we'd be doing much better with their freshly harvested wheat. But
I believe I had a taco in Mexico once that I found out was like a wheat tortilla or flour-based tortilla, and I had like almost nothing. I would argue that if I didn't know that afterwards, I would have just thought I felt sick from the alcohol I drank, you know, that day. Which where here, if I did that, I would know immediately, and it would be several days of feeling terrible, and even like other than just digestive stuff, like depressive type feeling and, you know, low energy. Like it's very clear, and so I was just blown away by that. It's like, why are we processing things differently then if we don't have to? Is it that big of a cost savings? I'm sure it is, but
I'm sure it's all follow the money.
Yeah.
Oh, good stuff. Well, you know, another kind of thing that comes up, I know we're bouncing around here. So, but there's just so much to unpack here, which is great. I was looking at a book. It's Estrogeneration. It's by
Jay something. Jay.
Yeah, Jay Anthony. Yeah,
Anthony
J. Thank you. So okay, so you're familiar with it because that's going to lead into my next question. Just I haven't unpacked a lot of the details. It's more having a discussion about it and read some of the notes, and just curious to like what do you see out there related to, you know, even some of the estrogen related issues, and I can get more specific with my question, but as far as the transfer and environment and food and water and plastics, etc., like what do you see in there, validity there, etc.? What are you just trying to get your thoughts?
Yeah, so Leland Stillman is another guy I've talked to a lot about this. He's really into all the different environmental exposures, everything from the air, light, you know, mold in the food. So he gets really in detail when he works with patients about going over these things and making sure that you're not, everything is kind of a tight lid on all those things that could be potential exposures. But my gosh, I mean, it takes.
This episode is brought to you by First Detachment. First Detachment is an expert formulated supplement company founded by renowned coach Justin Harris. We've combined science with real-world experience in each product. We are battle tested. Are you? Find your battle today at firstdetachment.com.
In the modern environment, you know, and yeah, I think that it's one of those things that, you know, again, like with my family, like, you know, you could go crazy trying to protect your kids from all this stuff, saying you're not only going to eat this and that, and you know, I have parents out there that don't let their kids have any artificial dyes and colorings, and they go to a birthday party, they're singling them out. And it's like, oh gosh, what a mess.
Yeah.
Why do we have to do all this? What's really going to be the, you know, the major impacting factor here? And I don't have that answer. I don't know.
Yeah. So it does, to your point, it does seem overwhelming. I mean, even just, you know, I know Justin has 4 daughters, I have 2, and, you know, I just try to stick as simple as like sugar and fat content relative, like the types, because don't get me wrong, like we try to do all the, you know, natural and good things, right? We're both pretty educated on the topic, but it's still just overwhelming to where I'm like, hey, honey, I know you brought that organic thing or whatever, but it's got almost as much sugar as a pop. You know, I'm like, well, let's rethink that for the little 8-year-old body that's running around, you know, it's just, yeah, it can get overwhelming. So I was just kind of, that recently came up in a discussion, and so I just thought I would get your input on it, being in the field, and if you're seeing.
Or you can put organic on anything. You grab a box of Twizzlers and call them organic Twizzlers, and suburban white women will eat that up.
Yeah, exactly, because it's organic, right? And are you seeing a lot of like misconceptions whenever you're working with a patient, you know, coming in, as far as where you kind of have to steer them away from that, or?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that, how do you have the time when, especially in a traditional office visit, right? You got 5 to 7 minutes. There's no way in hell you're going to figure out their diet and all the things they're doing wrong with it. But I just get kind of glimpses when they tell me things, and I'm just like, oh gosh, where do we even start with this? You know, this is a train wreck.
Yeah.
Well, that's the problem. They it seems like because people are so like low informed. There's some area of interest that they see on Facebook or something, and then they kind of go all in on that, whether it's keto, low carb, organic, high fiber, and it's like they don't realize, you know, there's a whole world of health. But I see it all the time where, especially my kids, where, well, not so much anymore, because you almost can't bring food in anymore for school, for birthday parties and stuff, because there's so many specifics that all the kids have. You can never meet everything. But like where, you know, like one mom, or I don't want to say mom, one parent will be so obsessed with carbs, and they'll think like that's the only enemy on earth, and they'll eat, you know, a pound of peanuts a day, which is fine, and not realize that there's 6,000 calories in it, you know. Or same thing, you'll get to organic, and they'll eat garbage, you know, as long as it's organic. All they eat is snacks. They never eat a whole food meal. They're eating, you know, dozens of organic candies that they unwrap all day, and they think that they're doing a great benefit to themselves, or, you know, as opposed to eating actually healthy, you know, varied meals. And you can do that with anything. I mean, the anti-sugar people, the high fiber people, or now I'm seeing the high protein people. I'm seeing, which is good, because so many women were terrible with protein for so long. But now I'm seeing where every woman's trying to get like an insane amount of protein a day, 150 grams, 200 grams of protein a day. And it's like, that's great, lady, but you don't exercise, you don't work out, you don't need 200 grams of protein. I'm glad you're eating some, I'm glad you're getting some amino acids, but it's like, you know, it's hard to get information. I mean, clients ask me all the time, I'd like to learn more. What are some good books? It's like, they're really, you know, there are good books, but they tend to be focused on a single topic, which just fuels that even further, because then you read more about why this one particular thing is good. I don't know that, like, the solution to that, but there needs to be something better taught. It's almost like we knew more about, the average person understood nutrition better when we didn't know anything about nutrition. You know, you go back to diets in the 50s, and, you know, people had, you know, oatmeal and maybe some eggs for breakfast, you know, and they ate a turkey sandwich for lunch, and then they had, you know, roast beef with potatoes for dinner, like, you know, like whole food, non-processed meals, without knowing any different.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And, you know, there's a lot of controversy in this area, but, you know, I think that if any of us went to one of these so-called blue zones and we lived most of our days outside, hanging out with friends, it probably wouldn't matter nearly as much what we're eating, you know, as long as we're not eating straight garbage. But, you know, in a system where the traditional system is still, I have cardiologists that I see patients that I work with, and they're still saying low fat diet. I'm like, this is still like 1983. We're still pushing that nonsense. But, you know, and then there's also the people that are really hardcore in one direction or another. And you're always like, well, you look at their labs, like, I don't think this is the right style for you with your full carnivore keto and your insanely high ApoB level. I know Paul Saladino tells you you're going to get heart disease because your insulin is 2, but I'm telling you, like, I don't think that's necessarily the case, you know? And I don't, again, it's one of those things that's so hard. Go ahead. Has there ever been
we've all lived a lot of years, and we've all learned things about a wide variety of topics. And in any of those areas, there's never been go all the way extreme in one direction and it solves everything. It's always like, you know, a myriad of things, but we still fall into it over and over again. And especially with health, it seems like, you know, because we read a book by someone who says, you know, It's like when jogging first came out and everyone was jogging, you know, and that cured everything until it didn't. And then they find that, you know, then Tybo or you know,
Tybo,
or anything. But it's like we never learn from ourselves. And any topic, you go to whatever someone's an expert in, plumbing, you know, HVAC, you say, you know, yes, the plumber does everything have to be copper pipes? They'll say no, you know, like sometimes PEX works better. Is that we all know in any field that we understand that taking a varied approach and understanding the way things work together is the way to do it. But it's like you can't get that through people's heads with health and nutrition. They get locked into it, you know, a unifocused approach.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that at one point I thought, well, we can just get some genetic testing and figure out the perfect diet for you. And honestly, that doesn't work in practice a lot of times. You'll get these genes that say, well, this person is going to be much more sensitive to carbohydrates. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I do fine with carbohydrates. Yeah. So there's never like a perfect correlation with genetics data, because again, there's so many other factors from the environment that you just can't account for. So again, it's one of those things that's an ongoing process for all of us. So
yeah, it's almost like we just need to like start over and just say, you know, step one, try to eat food the way it was, like it came out of nature, you know. Try to eat food that as the ingredients say the food you're eating, you know. The ingredients of rice is rice. The ingredients of a Rice Krispie has 35 different ingredients, you know. If your ingredient list is more than the food you're eating, then it's probably not the food you should be eating.
Yeah.
No, what's the ingredients list on a flank steak? It says meat.
So now are you doing any work with nutrition application? Are you working on do you do diet plans with people as well, with everything else? What does that generally look like for you? What type of patient are you servicing, and that fun stuff when it comes to that? I guess maybe more an athlete. Sorry to cut into my own question, but if you're kind of working with an athlete or someone trying to be like optimize, where they are from a nutrition standpoint, what is your approach generally with that you see?
Yeah, get a feel for what they're doing as a baseline and kind of see where the breakdown is and their macronutrients. The stuff that you guys do all the time, I do too. MyFitnessPal, all these other kind of apps are, chronometer. I think that what really does help is when there's suspected, there's a lot of bloating and food sensitivities. And I think it's really nice for anyone, athletes, lay people that aren't athletes, couch potatoes, to get that information, just because it's so, it's not going to be found out by conventional testing. Now, you can do really, really strict elimination diets for 3 months and eliminate all the antibodies, but a lot of people, there's no way in hell they're going to be able to do that. So it's good to give them data and saying exactly what's driving the process and cut out a few select things that it could be. And the problem with that then is there's 5 million food sensitivity tests out there. So then which one do you do? And they're expensive. And but I've got a few good ones that I've liked to use in the past that work pretty well. So,
gotcha. Would you say it's more of a? Is there a certain ratio of macros that you usually see? Is it? How do you determine that? Is it calories? Like just kind of. Do you have any general?
Yeah,
I know you're very individualized with your approch, but just like Justin is as well, and so.
Well, as a physics guy, he's probably the fact that people can't understand at its core calories in versus calories out. It's like it's like that's what I think Neil deGrasse Tyson even said. Like if a physicist wrote a nutrition book, that's what it would say: eat less calories than you burn. But people still don't believe that. They still think that magically they'll eat, 1,000 calories, burn 2,000 calories, and somehow manifest energy from nothing and store it into their body. And it blows my mind that as advanced of a society we are, that we can't even get. No one thinks if their gas tank in their car runs out, they'll be able to drive even further. No one thinks that. No one thinks like if they don't pay their energy bill, they'll get even more, light in their car. No one thinks if their propane tank runs out, they'll be able to, then they'll really get to cook their steak on the grill. It's like every other form of energy. We realize that if you have energy, you can use it. But for whatever reason, calories, which is just a measure of energy, the amount of energy it takes to raise 1 gram of water, 1 degree Celsius, we can't make that universal knowledge somehow.
Yeah, no, it's nuts. And you know, it'd be nice to do resting metabolic rates on everyone and have these nice calculators, but yeah, that equipment is not available to most people. So yeah. But if it is, it's great. You can use it and give
that's really what it is. That's what people don't realize, that they're just not burning as many calories as they think. You know, it's not that they like they eat fewer calories than they burn. It's that they're not burning as many calories as they think, and also probably that they're eating more calories than they think, which study after study shows. If you take you take an underweight person and you ask them to self-report their calorie, it's like they self-report anything from 10 to 15% less. If you take an overweight person and ask them to self-report their calories, they self-repeat that they eat 20 or 30% less than they actually do. And that's another education thing. It's just we just get no education, unless you specifically search it out yourself. I mean, I can remember health class in high school. They didn't teach me anything of value about nutrition or health and health period. Otherwise, other than I'd get hair on my balls, like that's the only thing I learned.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this, I'm sure you've had other people tell you this. I mean, nutrition in medical school is a complete joke. Like it's maybe, I remember it was biochemistry, maybe a 2-hour lecture on a couple different like severe vitamin deficiencies, like beriberi. These are the kind of things that you never see from these severe, and that's it, And so
I remember like an entire lecture was devoted to how smokers need to eat more vitamin C than non-smokers, and the amount is like a non-smoker needs like 70 milligrams a day on average. A smoker needs like 100 milligrams. So even the amount is like microscopic and totally not an issue to any, because scurvy hasn't been a problem since like the 18th century. Yeah. And I just remember thinking like, this is outrageous. Like, none of us in this class know what a healthy dinner is, but we're spending an entire lecture on the amount of vitamin C a smoker needs. Can't you just say a smoker will need more vitamin C, but they're probably already getting more than enough because we're all overweight and eat vitamin fortified cereals? But that was just like 20 some years later. That still annoys me.
Yeah.
Well, a couple other topics. I know one of the ones that pops up a lot, specifically in like bodybuilding. We have a wide range of audience, some health, some powerlifting, strongman, so, some athletes, some bodybuilders, etc. One of the ones that comes up a lot, I know Justin talks a lot about too, and is blood pressure. So can you talk a little about, if we haven't covered it before, just to hear directly from a physician, when is the best time to take blood pressure? What are some common reason for pause and concern, and just kind of walk through, your approach with that?
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting topic that pretty much gets ignored, because there's a lot of problems with blood pressure measurements. It's so labile. It's normal to have a big increase during exercise to a certain extent. We do a lot of exercise testing, and I see a lot of people that have very bad endothelial vascular health, and their blood pressure, shoots up like 240 over 120. That's not normal. But getting up to like 160s, 170s, over 90, that's very normal with exercise. So then you really want to make sure that you want to have a very good sense of what your baseline resting blood pressure is. And most people, Peter T has a great reel on this, by the way, about resting for 5 minutes and, making sure that the arm is supported, that it's at the level of the heart, the cuff fits right, all these factors that can really affect 5 to 10 millimeters of mercury difference on the cuff. And, if you look at the way the blood pressure guidelines have changed, it's for a reason. They find that such clear relationship to cardiovascular risk and mortality with even blood pressures over 120 over 80. So trying to keep it below that range, even though that's still technically pre-hypertensive, is very important to do. And so
that's remarkable to me, because I've seen that change in real time, with my age and my mother being a nurse. I remember in like 8th grade, doing, because I would always do whatever we had a science fair or whatever. Mine would always be on the human body or health, or because even back then I was interested in it. And I remember putting like a normal blood pressure should be under like 150 over 95 or 150 over 90. And I was like, that's just what it was. And then I remember when I got to college, it was like 145 over 85 or something. I was like, oh, wow. But, and then by the time like 20 years pass, it's remarkable how much that changed and how closely they've correlated that to so many, health issues. But that's really interesting, because it wasn't that long ago, 30 years ago, that it was quite a bit higher, was accepted as normal.
Yeah. But one tool that I'm hoping will gain more widespread use. It's just like there's continuous glucose monitors. There's 24-hour ambulatory blood pressure monitors, and these are fantastic. Like, they're not expensive. You know, a lot of hospitals out there they bought several of these and they clean them, they distribute them. You wear it for a day, take it back. And that's a game changer in my mind, because not only is it telling you what the kind of average and what the fluctuations are, but also tells you if you have a dip at night. And if you're not dipping at night, that's a very bad sign in terms of your endothelial vascular health and other risk factors. So, you know, and I've had a lot of people tell me, do I still need this blood pressure medicine? I'm like, well, let's wear this monitor. And if it goes, they stop their medicine, they wear it the day, their blood pressure is great. I said, no, so it's a good way to do that, rather than the old school way of having a journal and, you know, tracking for several weeks. That is laborious. Not everyone does.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Anything that's self-reported is rough, because what usually happens is they take it, you know, 3 out of 10 times, and the other ones they kind of pick a number in around the range of the previous one they did. Like, anything that's self-reported is you're trusting information that probably isn't accurate.
Right. Yeah.
Are there any other you know, just lifestyle, nutrition, supplementation changes or suggestions that are out there? I mean, again, I know this is widespread, it's going to be more individualized, but that you've seen be effective for blood pressure. So you talked about the 24-hour monitoring is a good tool for that. Are there any tools for if someone has slightly elevated, or this is a concern of theirs that they want to address it?
Yeah, no, I think exercise therapy is so well documented. We get into the whole zone 2 cardio discussion, and I think that for the vast majority of people, zone 2 cardio is awesome. I think there are some people out there that genetically are just more designed for sort of higher intensity interval training type stuff and much more responsive to that. And I'm one of those people. Actually, I don't do well with endurance stuff, but by and large, I think that the effect of that on blood pressure is very real. And, you know, they've shown all kinds of cool studies about, you know, holding tension with grip strength, or even just holding like a plank and kind of really tensing up for periods of at least 30 seconds, how valuable that is to control blood pressure doing that. I think they had these participants do it several times a week, like 4 or 5 times a week, and, you know, showed a good like 10-millimeter drop in their systolic. So there are definitely things that can impact it significantly by doing that. So especially if you're right on that borderline.
I got my first high blood pressure diagnosis when I was 15 and 135 pounds. So I've always been interested in blood pressure. One, because that's what typically kills bodybuilders is kidney disease, which is, you know, really tightly linked to elevated blood pressure. And then 2, for whatever reason, everyone in my family has high blood pressure. Everyone in my family is overweight, which makes it more expected. But I was diagnosed as a teenager, barely, and as a thin teenager. And so I've had I've had to put care around that my whole life. Not just as a side, not really a question or anything.
Yeah. Yeah. No, are you a salt sensitive person? Do you know, like, the salt impact?
Well, I'm interesting. My sodium is always low on my blood work, but I eat too much salt. I mean, I eat a lot of salt. I love salt. That salt's like the only flavor I care about. But my sodium's always slightly below normal or slightly below the normal range on blood work. So I don't know, like, I've never really worked closely with a doctor on it. You know, like, I get a blood pressure medication, I exercise, I do the best as far I can as far as my body weight as a bigger guy. But my blood pressure is controlled with medication. But yeah, no, and I'm not. Well, I shouldn't say. I probably am. I'm very sensitive to water retention. I don't know that it's directly related to sodium because I eat so much sodium all the time. But I definitely have pretty impressive swings with water retention, specifically with carbohydrate intake.
Did you ever have is your potassium ever high?
Sometimes, yeah, but
have you ever had your renin aldosterone measured?
I don't know. Does Merrick do that? Because the last blood work I had was actually with Merrick.
Yeah, well, it can be an add-on. You can just get it through LabCorp, renin aldosterone, because high aldosterone levels will do that exact thing. They'll increase your potassium, drop your sodium, make your you can get some.
That sounds about right then.
Yeah,
interesting. Well, as far as training effects, right? Like, I know earlier, say we referenced like the 80s and stuff like that, right? Like, heavy training was frowned upon, or quote unquote intense training. Is there any data or information you've seen around heart health? You know, if it was, say, heavy compound movements like a deadlift, a squat, leg press, etc. And I just recall I had a what the heck is it called now? I know it's benign, but it's a an arrhythmia. And so I had a
PVC?
man, why am I drawing ablation? Yeah, PVCs.
Oh,
thank
ablation,
you.
yeah.
So and then I had a cardiac ablation done, and the cardiologist, U of M, he's like this world-renowned guy with arrhythmias, and he's just like, or with PVCs, and he's like, "Why do you train so heavy? You don't need to." And I'm like, "Well, I should." So my wife took it as I shouldn't. And I'm like, "No," he said, "I don't need to." I was like, "There's the difference. Like mental health, I do need to throw a bunch of weight on my back and almost kill myself pretty much once a week at least." I'm like, "What?" So I'm just, I say that kind of funny, but I do know like back there were some, things about lifting too heavy and all these things of that nature. Is there anything out there in the cardiology space that you're seeing either pros or cons against heavy lifting and things of that nature?
Heavy lifting, I haven't seen anything on. I think a lot of the chronic cardio stuff, yeah, I mean, that's been well documented. All the Ironman people that get calcium in their arteries from the excessive stress, shear stress, and things like that. But the heavy lifting, I'm not familiar with that in the literature. I'd have to look.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point.
But with the PVC thing you brought up, I had a lot of PVCs too. So I was in persistent bigeminy when I was a teenager.
Oh, wow.
And they had no idea why. So interestingly, around that time, do you guys remember Hydroxycut?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Got sick on that many times.
I was taking a lot of Hydroxycut, which had an ephedrine derivative in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was probably the reason. I don't think I told them that I was taking that, but I had a whole cardiac workup, and they actually did the electrophysiology study where they went in with the heart cath. They were going to do an ablation, but when they got in there, they couldn't really find a source of it. And they tried to induce like VTAC and things like that, and they couldn't do it. And they just said, screw it, whatever, you're good.
I will say, like they put your strapped to this cold table, butt naked, and at U of M at University of Michigan, it's a teaching hospital. So there's like a full room of people staring at me. They knock you out, you wake up, and they're like, you can't move. And you look down, there's someone down there like moving this thing in your heart, and then they give you a shot of adrenaline to find where the arrhythmia is. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's insane. But yeah, they thought they got it all. And literally I'm laying there for 20 minutes, multiple shot or whatever, however long, was longer than normal. He wanted to make sure he got it all. And right when they're getting ready, they start backing out. PVC popped up again. So I was like, oh, but it's way down. The burden is, I think, I don't remember now if it was like 8% or 7%, like a 7 or 8% burden. So it was at like a 15 or 16. So, and it's not in an area in the heart, what I was told, that thickens, like it doesn't grow. It's a different type of fiber, which was great to hear, because I didn't, I know Justin's explained this a bunch of times, but for those that don't know, as the heart muscle grows, it grows inward, which closes in on the cavity, and then you're, cause a lot of other issues from that standpoint.
Obstructive cardiomyopathy, bad thing.
Yeah. I saw when I did echoes, we had a guy who would complain about being really out of breath at exertion. So you do him a stress test and everything's fine. You do a stress echo, everything's fine. There's nothing on the EKG that shows any ischemia with exertion. Can't find anything. Turned out we did a modified stress echo, which is basically just have him like do a modified stress test that we made up on the spot to get his heart rate as high as possible, jump on the echo table, and then put a piezo reader, which just measures the sound, no imaging with it, to be more precise. And his aorta, the inflow into the left ventricle was aliasing at the lowest scale with the piezo, which measures the highest pressure. So it was like just outrageous. I'm surprised it wasn't just piercing through the bottom of his aorta or of his left ventricle with the pressures. And they cut out a chunk of the septal wall, right near the aorta, and he was perfectly fine after that.
Yeah. You can ablate that tissue. They sometimes use like alcohol to ablate it.
Yeah. Alcohol ablation, alcohol solves everything. The cause of and solution to all of life's problems.
There you go. Some other things out there, some other topics. I know there's a lot of, there's been a lot of buzz. I remember when it first came out, because I was communicating with some compounding pharmacies, the GLP-1 agonists, like the semaglutide. Is that something you're seeing a lot used? I know there's been some buzz around issues with it. There's been a lot of positive buzz. Do you have a stance on that one way or another? And are you using it when you practice?
Yeah, no, I think I'm still overall positive towards them, especially in people that have tried a lot of other strategies and just a nice way to kind of kick things into accelerated mode a little bit. You know, I don't see it as a long-term, like, I don't think people are going to be on it for 5 years. You know, ideally it's like a 1 year type thing that helps them fine tune other things of their lifestyle together. They get that initial weight loss, they're feeling much better, and then kind of sustain it. The problem is, as you know, is the trials show that that weight starts creeping back up when they stop the drugs. But what the trials don't tell you is, well, what other changes did these people make? Right. They just did the drug and not change anything else. Well, okay, sure, you stop it, it's going to reverse. So that's how I think about it. You know, I don't see any significant safety concerns with it. Really, with any of the peptides, I've never seen any significant safety problems. You know, the black box warning about the medullary thyroid cancer comes from rats. It's never been seen in any humans whatsoever. So that's all kind of bogus. But I do agree with other people that it's important to monitor protein intake, not too much, right? But but all those basic things. And I think the cost is the most prohibitive thing about them, just from the demand. The prices have skyrocketed, and unfortunately, I worry that the compounding pharmacies are going to get viciously shut down at some point, because pharma is losing so much money by them compounding these medicines. Right. And there's no way in hell they're not looking at their balance sheet and being like, well, we got to shut these guys down. I mean, I can guarantee you they're trying to do that right now.
Yeah.
Who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think
though, have you seen anything burst onto the market like that?
No.
It's outrageous. It's like a year ago, no one had heard of it. And now I don't think I get an inquiry or an email from a new client or even a current client that doesn't ask about it. It's just, I've never seen anything like it. It's like just spread like wildfire.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everyone thinks it's a magic pill, you know.
Right. There's always looking for the silver bullet. That's never going to change. And, you know, I do tend to favor tirzepatide a little bit more, just because the nausea with semaglutide is pretty universal.
Yes.
But tirzepatide, people are not complaining nearly as much with that. So I like that. I don't like having to give semaglutide with Zofran, all those other things. I'm like, I just give you tirzepatide, you'll be better. Yeah.
What is that? Why the difference? Why tirzepatide? Why is that?
It has to do with the strength of agonism at the GLP-1 receptor site, and it's also a GIP as well. So it's dual mechanism, and the trials suggest it's more effective in terms of weight loss. There is another one, of course, coming down the pike. Pharma spills money. You know, third generation one of these pills or one of these injections that's going to be, you know, touted as even better. So for that.
Okay. No, it's interesting. Yeah, I think it's interesting too. There were some buzz around, you know, you have to correct me on the stat, if it was 40% of the weight loss was lean body mass or something to that effect. But what I try to explain to people is, you know, one, they're probably already taking in most cases too low of protein, and then you cut their intake in half, and that's going to, you know, drop significantly even more than they don't do any kind of resistance training.
I think there's a newer study just came out. I saw someone post on Instagram, one of those guys that post studies. I think it was a newer study that specifically looked for that to see how serious a problem this was, and it was like a 7% reduction.
Okay.
And it was, and they didn't really, you know, correlate it exactly to anything, but you'd have to imagine that people who generally tend to have a poor diet and they lose their appetite, or their appetite's reduced, what foods are they going to keep in? They're not going to keep in the healthy foods. They're, you know what I mean? So I would have to imagine that plays a role in it. You know, the type of people who eat M&Ms and a turkey sandwich for lunch and they have no appetite, they're not going to eat the turkey sandwich. They're just going to have the M&Ms.
Right.
You can cheat any system. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's I think it's important. Like, I know it's something that has been stressed in a lot of our platforms, is like, read the studies. Like even our products and ingredients, people will call, or I was just talking to a client recently, and you know, really good lineup of supplementation they had, but the dosage was a third of the effective amount. And I'm like,
yeah,
you can buy ours or not buy ours. Don't care. Like, I mean, I care, but, you know, not pressuring anyone. I was like, but just do your research on the dosage. So either take triple what you have, or switch to a different, you know, company that kind of actually has things that line up with the amounts that'll be effective. So, yeah, I just think, you know, getting that good information, good content out there for people is important. Any other hot topics for you, Dr. Campbell? I know we're coming up on time pretty soon here, but want to get, you know, see if there's anything else that you think, you know, might be a benefit for our viewers out there.
You know, just to circle back to one thing I mentioned briefly before, I told you guys my wife didn't believe in any of this stuff. Well, so I'd worked with her mom, actually, and her mom had weight problems for pretty much her entire life since kids, right? It sounded like, talking to her, that she had some variant, maybe a milder form of PCOS going through life, had some male pattern hair growth and hirsutism and a lot of issues, and had tried, a billion different things, and, crash diet, all the usual stuff, right? So I worked with her and about a year later, we did all kinds of things with her hormones and other kinds of stuff, and targeted supplements and good diet. I had a trainer that I work with who's awesome, work with her, and, she looks the best she's ever looked. And so that kind of started to change her mind a little bit. And then she was worried that she was having some neurological symptoms, numbness and tingling in parts of her body. Went and saw a neurologist, had, the EEG, and, she was worried about MS. So they did all the testing for that and couldn't find anything. And so then I said, well, let me look into this a little bit more. So we set up a testing that looks for very specific antibodies to certain parts of the nervous system. And she was positive for those antibodies. And I showed her that there's cross-reactivity with those antibodies and with gluten. And then I showed her there's gluten sensitivity. And I'm like, all you got to do is you cut out gluten and this won't progress anymore. And so I think that those conversations have helped to bring her a little bit more to the side of, there is some actual value to this stuff. So
sure,
I'll go back to that since.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you bringing that up, because it's like we were saying earlier too, right? Like there's so much stuff out there. There's so many ways people can kind of maybe over-index and freak out a little bit, and it's just a mixture of, maybe it's a cascade of events that happen that cause that end issue that gets you in front of a clinician, and really it's just like go back 10 steps, and it's just one thing that caused all that to kind of come from it.
Well, right. And yes, there is an initial, there's an upfront cost to it, but I mean, that intervention is so simple. You remove something from your diet, you remove the antibodies clear, you never have a problem, versus it progressing, you having to get on these really fancy, expensive immune suppressive treatments the rest of your life. I mean, I know which one I'd pick, so.
Right. Any other, just general kind of, if you had to high point some tips or pointers out there for people, is there anything that comes to mind from an activity standpoint? Do you have any general guidelines that you try to give to people when you're working with someone?
Yeah, I just think that I would just encourage people that if you're feeling miserable, like, just don't give up, keep looking. There's people out there that can help you. I was in those shoes. My family have been in those positions. The right people are out there. You just gotta sometimes do a little bit more digging and find those people. But
yeah, no, I appreciate that. Justin, any closing thoughts or information out there that maybe we didn't cover? I know we bounced around a lot, so
go physics. I don't know. I like when we have physics guys on here.
You know what came up the other day, Justin? You would like this. We were talking about fluid hemodynamics, and so I had PTSD a little bit from college. There was this textbook we had that was from these Russian authors that was just the most complicated textbook that could possibly be. It's one of those textbooks where it's just like equations, lines of equations again and again and again. And, once you get past Puiseux's law, it's like, well, what the hell? I don't know what anything else is here. And we were talking about in the context of blood flow and how blood flow is a non-Newtonian flow because the red blood cells will clump when the flow slows down. And so all that kind of stuff, it was kind of fun. But
yeah, that's cool. Yeah, the Russians are crazy. Like, do you ever? I think it's more of a grad school classical mechanics, like like a physics one at the graduate level. Landau.
Yeah, that's what we used. We used Landau Tech. Yeah.
Yeah, that book. Yeah, it's like, oh, you get all pumped. It's like, hey, 120 pages for a textbook. This is awesome. Yeah. But then
very concise, but very.
Yeah, you open page 1 and you realize why. They don't mess around. They don't waste a word or use a word.
No.
It's get right to the point. You just do the math.
Exactly. Yeah. That's it. Landau. Yeah, that's exactly right. We had that classical mechanic book, and also that one wasn't bad. It was the fluid hemodynamics.
Anything with fluids it's like fluids are crazy. They don't make any sense at all. Like any like fluid dynamic, air fluid, hydrostatic fluid, anything. It's like, I don't even know. I don't understand how people like Bernoulli, how he's able to come up with that stuff. That stuff blows my mind way more than F equals MA. I feel like you give me enough time under an apple tree, I could have realized that gravity was constant. But fluid dynamics, no, and there's no way I'd ever come up with that.
Is that gonna be the next thing, Justin? We're gonna hear from your family that you're sitting underneath the apple tree just in deep thought.
No.
Something tells me that won't happen anytime soon.
We don't have any apple trees, but no. or I don't have any deep thoughts, but so we're doubly covered.
All right, well, hey, we really appreciate you coming on, Dr. Campbell. We'll definitely put different ways that people can find your content and your information in the show notes today, but thanks for coming on. And as always, any of our viewers have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments section, and we'll do our best to track down those answers for you. And kind of exciting thing for our viewers out there too. We're obviously, a lot of this has been on YouTube for those of us that find us. That's our primary spot has been, but we're now on Spotify, and we are branching out to all of the other, your Prime, your Apple, all the other places where you can get podcasts from an audio version. So if you're doing your cardio, we had a few people actually tag us on Instagram with their tablets, and you just see Justin's face on there as they're listening to a rant, which is pretty cool to see.
A double speed, 2x speed.
There you go. I've done that a few times, actually. There's some pretty good people on Peter Attia's podcast that I had to speed it up because it was a little,
they're a little slow.
Yeah, a little slow, but it was good. It was good content. So, which is, we can talk about that another time, I guess. But thanks again for coming on, and for everybody, all of our viewers out there, we'll see you. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, guys.